日本の皆さん、こんばんは。
Good evening to Japanese people, people in Germany. Good morning to you all. Thank you very much for joining us at the Robot Revolution and Industrial IoT International Symposium 2021. My name is Ohira from RRI Initiative Council. I will be moderating today's session. Today, we will hear about the progress report of Japan-Germany expert groups. In April 2016, there was a joint statement issued with Industry 4.0 and RRI. Currently, 3 expert groups are engaged in the activities, and today we will hear about their progress. Before starting the presentations, we'd like to hear from the governments of Japan and Germany. First of all, we have Ms. Masayo Tokuhiro, Director for Policy Planning and Coordination Division, Manufacturing Industries Bureau of METI. Thank you very much for the introduction. My name is Tokuhiro of METI. Thank you very much for participating in RRI International Symposium co-hosted by METI, BMWi, and RRI. I would also like to thank all the experts here with us. Thank you very much indeed. As probably mentioned last year, the joint efforts between Japan and Germany in the area of IoT and Industry 4.0 joint statement concerning the cooperation of Japan and Germany about IoT and Industry 4.0 was announced by BMWi and METI in March 2016. That was the beginning. And since that time, we have held regular symposiums. And this year, this is the 7th symposium. I'd like to take this opportunity to thank all the people who made efforts to organize this year's symposium. Mr. Heß and other people from Germany, thank you very much indeed for your participation. Now, at METI, I belong to Manufacturing Industries Bureau. So my mission is to how to realize the digital transformation of manufacturing sector. In the case of Japan, about 20% of the GDP comes from manufacturing sector. Probably this percentage is similar in Germany. So we think that this theme is very important one. But the more I try to think about this topic, I feel the need that we have to go beyond the manufacturing sector. That is to say, it's not just connecting what exists right now, but rather we have to have a broader perspective and think about how digital technologies can contribute in creating new values. I listened to day 1 through day 3 discussions. There were keywords including circular economy, value-based industry. So we go beyond the manufacturing sector and we try to think what are necessary to generate new values as an industry as a whole. In generating new values, some companies probably need to break the existing framework. And we are still searching for specific measures. That is my honest impression. But as METI, we would like to stay side by side with those companies who are struggling with challenges so that we can support their transformations. Now, overall theme of this symposium I hear is the manufacturing sector as a foundation for all the industries. So thinking about manufacturing, in order for manufacturing sector to generate new values and to realize transformation, we have to go beyond this sector. And we need to build the digital platform or digital infrastructure. So this theme is a very timely one. In the area of these efforts, we believe that Germany is the leader, and we need to learn from Germany. Today, we will hear from great guest speakers, for example, how to build the ecosystem and others. In utilizing the foundation and generating new values, we need to continue to build the cooperation and collaborative relationship between Germany and Japan so that we can lead the other nations. With that, I'd like to end my speech. I'd like to wish for the fruitful session. Thank you very much for your attention. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Tokuhiro. Next up, I'd like to invite Mr. Markus Heß, Deputy Director General of the Royal Ministry of Economic Affairs and Energy. Please, Mr. Heß.
Thank you very much. Dear Mrs. Tokuhiro, dear Mr. Nakatomi, ladies and gentlemen, minasama. Also from my side, a very warm welcome to this year's Germany-Japan Expert Forum. For me, it is a unique opportunity to speak on such a well-established event. I highly appreciate that you have again dedicated an entire session to our bilateral exchange. This time, we meet in a video conference, but next time, I'm pretty sure we meet again in person. And we need that. Our meeting is a vital proof that our cooperation grows and gets even closer over the years. The pandemic and its impact on the global economy and value chains underlined that there is a need for more international cooperation. The digitalization of the industries is one of our key aspects. Industry 4.0 stands for a fundamental process of innovation and transformation, leading to new forms of business and working in global digital ecosystems. The upcoming German government will definitely increase its efforts to support this digital transformation of industries. Next slide, please. Our Vision 2030 of Industry 4.0 formulates a holistic approach. Focus is to shape digital ecosystems globally. And at the heart of the design of digital ecosystems are the strategic fields of action. It's three of them: autonomy, interoperability, and sustainability. I used to call these the triangle of success. Next slide, please. With the strategic autonomy, we mean technological sovereignty, and it is the freedom of everyone to take independent decisions and to engage in fair competition, from the business model to the individual's purchasing decision. Autonomy requires an open digital infrastructure for everyone. The initiative Gaia-X is the foundation to achieve this objective. Next slide, please. The next aspect is the interoperability. Interoperability ensures comprehensive networks and requires standards, a regulatory framework, decentralized systems, and artificial intelligence. Data availability is key for using next-generation AI applications in broad scale. Next slide, please. The third pillar is the sustainability. Economic, ecological, and social sustainability are essential cornerstones underpinning the values of society. Key aspects of sustainability are decent work and education, climate protection and circular economy, and social participation. This is very close, to my understanding, to the Japanese concept of Society 5.0, which I highly appreciate. Next slide, please. In Germany, we create projects and activities within a broad transformation network with different partners. In this sense, the platform Industry 4.0 acts as an enabler for broad application. As you can see here, those honeycombs. Key for success is the availability of data. because this is driving the industrial value creation. The question is always, how can our industrial strength be transposed and developed into the digital era? And how can the values we associate with our economic system be made compatible with digital business models? Next slide, please. This year, we start to develop and implement Industry 4.0 data space to enable extensive data exchange in a fully interoperable and autonomous data-driven ecosystem. So it's within the system that the data is used. Foundation of the data space provides frameworks, routines, standards, and guidelines that can be used as a basis to initiate efficient cross-company collaboration and data sharing. Again, this is closely linked to the important initiative Gaia-X, with the objective to develop and implement a federated data infrastructure enabling strategic autonomy and a new level of security by setting standards and policy rules. Therefore, Gaia-X will lay the foundation of how we will exchange and access data in our industrial domains. Over the last year, we made substantial progress by finalizing the specifications and start the deployment phase. There are multiple ways how to participate and contribute in Gaia-X. Some Japanese companies are already engaged. We would like to invite you to participate in the initiative Gaia-X. And there are possibilities to set up common projects and use cases, all within an ecosystem. Next slide, please. Even in the pandemic, we had an extensive exchange and collaboration with Japan. To highlight just two things: our joint publication on digital platform in manufacturing industries and our ongoing experts meeting on cybersecurity, digital business models, and standardization. Next slide, please. I thank you very much for your attention, and I now give the floor to the experts, and I'm really looking forward to more close cooperation with the experts and in the German-Japan cooperation. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Heß. Now let us start the presentations. Today, due to the shortage of time, we do not have Q&A session. If you have any questions, please use the function of YouTube, and you'll be able to ask questions using the function of YouTube. Thank you very much for your understanding. First presentation is from Business Model Transformation Expert Group. The title of the presentation is From Competition and Collaboration Era Towards Digital Business Ecosystem Era. RRI, Manufacturing IoT, Information Marketing, and also NRI representative, we have Mr. Naoaki Fujino, and also we have Dr. Ulrich Löwen from Plattform Industrie 4.0, AG6, and Siemens. We would ask two gentlemen to introduce themselves and to start presentations. I'd first call upon Mr. Fujino.
Thank you for the kind introduction. I'm Fujino. It's very nice to be part of this. I am at RIT. I am a chief researcher of Digital Industrial Business Planning Department of NRI, and I'm in charge of Manufacturing IoT Information Marketing. So, Löwen-san, your turn now.
Thank you very much for the opportunity to present here. My name is Ulrich Löwen from Siemens, and I am member of Plattform Industrie 4.0 Working Group Digital Business Model And I am mainly considering this topic of digitalization in manufacturing industries from the perspective of use cases and business scenarios in order to explain what is the impact of digitalization for different stakeholder groups. Thank you.
はい。今ご紹介ありましたけども、本日
As was just explained, Dr. Löwen, a Platform Industry 4.0, we are working together. So today we want to talk about this title from competition and collaboration era towards digital business ecosystem era. This is our agenda today. Could you move on to the next? So first I want to introduce the challenges we recognize. What you see here is the Keidan document on digital transformation. To open future by sharing value, it's a document of many pages. I just give you the excerpt. The Keidan then defined digital transformation, DX. Fundamental and revolutionary changes in society, industry, and life as a result of advances in the use of digital technology and data, and radical changes implemented by industries. So that's the definition of Keidan then. RRI believes the concept of this fundamental and revolutionary changes in industry. And as we have discussed business ecosystem, we believe that business ecosystem will be more important going forward. So we chose this theme. We used to have this concept of competition and collaboration. We want to expand the viewpoint so that we can look at the whole ecosystem. So let me be a little bit more specific. Information moves faster. An innovation leads to another innovation. So innovation and its changes accelerate, especially when we have data, a new resource. It is very important for innovation. And the data that is available to humans, the data we use exponentially increase. And we have multiple social systems and information systems. They are now connected to each other. We are ushered into the era of systems of systems. While systems are increasingly complex, companies are asked to be accountable. As part of the quality management of product and services, traceability is demanded. And also, society demands companies to be carbon neutral and support circular economy. Solutions to multiple challenges are asked on companies. People's livelihood is richer, but as we face these challenges, it's impossible for one single company to respond and solve these challenges. In order to respond to these challenges, Europe is already moving into the second phase of social implementation. This that RRI believes, for example, to be carbon neutral and to achieve a circular economy, they are establishing ecosystem, business ecosystem, and digital economy. The movement has already started. And in 2018, when we organized RRI International Symposium, Dr. Kagaman from Akatech, yes, that is the right slide, he said digital platform is self-reinforcing growth engine. So platform is a market that has network effect. When the number of users increases, the platform will become more attractive to new users. As you can see in GAFA, we have social network and smartphone market. They actually offer network effects. And this platform also offers growth opportunities to technology providers. And this platform can be merged and connected with other platforms to create an ecosystem, especially the ecosystem using the cloud technology will be extended to a global level with limited investment. This platform creates an ecosystem, not like GAFA's ecosystem. All the industries should strive for this business model, this new ecosystem. So let me now introduce an example of non-GAFA type platform and its ecosystem. This is the apparel industry example. This is Löwen from Hong Kong. Please take a look at this video. If you could play this video. Can you replay the video? Yes, thank you. This is Löwen in Hong Kong. There is the retailer in Europe, the brand holders. They're working together to establish a network, including garment factories across the world. It used to take many, many weeks, but with the digital platform, they were able to reduce the time required. Detailed fitting can only take a few hours thanks to the collaboration. This collaboration engine has been provided on the IT platform. And there has been Asian business developing. This is a new business, rapidly growing. Conventionally, Western retailers and this company in Hong Kong, they had complicated communications. Even though they have to make a fast decision, this used to be a very time-consuming process. But with this platform, it changed everything. Löwen is now a retail agent designing products, and they were able to book the capacity in the factory. They can also manage progresses of the production and distribution. So that is the business model of Löwen. Simply, Löwen, you may think it's the only company that is providing a wide range of services, but it is more complicated. Löwen is on this IT platform. This IT platform is offered by the third-party company, E2Open, and there are many other companies that uses the same platform. And more than 20,000 factories are connected to this platform via standard interface. No one is logged in to E2Open platform. Users are not logged in thanks to the advancement of this interface. Thanks to the intercompany interface standard, this is really the necessity for us to be able to grow and enjoy the network effect. To build an ecosystem, conventional collaboration domain is extremely important. In other words, standardization is important. In this example of the apparel industry, this can be referred to as specific platform ecosystem. Now I'd like to hand it over to Dr. Löwen, please.
Now that Fujino-san has motivated the purpose of our collaboration, and I think this example of Löwen is really impressive to really show that the apparel industry is really redefined here, I now first want to have a look back. Please to the next slide. The German-Japanese collaboration on the topic of digital business models goes back to a workshop in Japan in October 2018. We continued this discussion in April 2019 as part of our meeting in Hannover Fair and found that digital business models are very closely linked to the observation that there is a specific company in the value network which operates a platform, a digital platform. So we decided to discuss this topic. We had an additional meeting in Japan and then decided to elaborate a joint paper on digital platforms in manufacturing industries. And we published this paper this year on Hannover Fair, and we presented it as part of the German-Japanese Economic Forum. Click, please. Where are we now today? We think that we really have developed well-founded and internationally recognized results. We can prove this if we are looking to the comments which we get with respect to our joint cooperation and especially this paper. But nevertheless, we can observe that this overall topic of platforms, digital business models is evolving. So we have to think ourselves, do we go more into detail? Or do we go one step back and trying to find and look to the overall picture? And we decided not to go much more into detail, but to step back and look to this topic from an ecosystem perspective. Next slide, please. Now, the term of ecosystem is very complex. Next slide, please. There are many different communities and they are all talking about ecosystems, but we think that there is not a really common understanding. They are often discussing different topics. But nevertheless, we think that there are common definitions or common aspects which are characterizing ecosystems. You have a set of business stakeholders. These business stakeholders are independent, but they want to deliver a joint value proposition for a specific customer. So you have different roles of actors, different relationships, but nevertheless, you have a common goal, and the common goal is somehow to satisfy your customer from a business perspective. And in order to somehow clarify these different discussions, we within Siemens had a proposal how to structure this topic of ecosystems. Click, please. We think that we can somehow distinguish different types of ecosystems. For sure, the boundaries are fluid, but nevertheless, on the left-hand side, there are these traditional value networks. Only to give you two examples. In automotive industry, especially in Germany, you have the supply chain. You have supplier with sub-suppliers and sub-sub-suppliers and so on. Very complex value networks. And this is something which we call traditional value networks, and you can see this as an ecosystem. Or another example, if you are looking to turnkey plants, typically you have an EPC contractor, and this EPC contractor manages many different companies which provides components, machines, services, and so on. And again, this is a kind of traditional value network. But then there are specific value networks, which we have here on the right-hand side. And these value networks are characterized that there is one specific business stakeholder who operates a platform, a digital platform. And this platform enables the interaction of the different participants. And what we have seen with this Li Feng example, we think that this is one specific kind of platform ecosystems. But in the overall discussion, there is a third kind of ecosystems discussions, and there the purpose is more the sharing of knowledge. You have different stakeholders which somehow want to exchange knowledge, and this is something which we call knowledge ecosystems. Typically, these knowledge ecosystems are not orchestrated by a company, but by some non-profit organization. And if you look to this structure, I want to now explain how this is related to the task and what we already did in the past. And please go to the next slide. If we reflect to our report, which we published this year, then we had 8 examples, 4 examples from Germany, 4 examples from Japan. And if you look to this, then these were platform ecosystems. We always had one company which operated a platform, and we have analyzed this in detail, and we clearly can say that 7 of them, which you find on the right-hand side, are clearly platform ecosystems. There is one additional example, this GrabCat example, which not only is a platform ecosystem, but also has some characteristics of knowledge ecosystems. So we placed it here somewhere in the middle of this triangle. But nevertheless, you can see that we really discussed this topic of platform ecosystems from a very specific perspective. But I think now the first question is, are these 8 or 7 examples representative? Are we looking to the overall possibility of platform ecosystems? And then we did an analysis in the following sense. Please click. There is one publication which is internationally very recognized, which divides the world of platforms into 3 kinds of platforms: transaction platforms, innovation platforms, and integration platforms. I do not have the time to explain this. The only message which I want to show you that we have 3 examples which are transaction platforms, 2 examples which are innovation platforms, and 2 examples which are integrated platforms. So our conclusion is that these examples are really representative, so that we have a good selection to really cover this topic of platform ecosystems. Next slide, please. Then there was a second track of work. Within Germany, within this working group of digital business model, there was an analysis about ecosystems. And there were analyzed around about 24 different kind of ecosystems. And then afterwards, these ecosystems were classified, and they were classified in 5 clusters. This has been published in a publication, unfortunately only available in German. And the main essence of this is the following, that there was identified one cluster, which was called value network value-based service, which you see on the top of the left-hand side. And this is something which we already discussed within Japan a long time, especially also in the standardization group. And this is a typical traditional value chain, because in this case, the platform is operated by the service provider. Then there were identified 2 kinds of platform ecosystem in this report. One is a typical transaction platform, something which we also recognized in our joint German and Japanese collaboration. And the other value network is a kind of IoT platform. And depending on the details, it's an innovation platform or an integration platform. I do not want to go into the details. So this is really consistent to the work which we did within our cooperation. And there were identified 2 different kinds of knowledge ecosystem. One more with the concept or with the purpose of standardization, and the other one more with the purpose of innovation. Maybe you call it open innovation or something in this area. Something, for instance, open source development is something which is there. So what you can see, that even for this analysis, these three different kinds of ecosystems somehow help to structure the overall discussion of ecosystems. So we decided within our joint cooperation with Germany and Japan in the context of digital business model to now have a look on this topic of ecosystems and starting with such a structure. Next slide, please. And one further slide, please. Now, to summarize the findings, especially from a, let me say, German perspective, we believe that the design of successful platform ecosystem in the manufacturing industry is the central issue that we must take care of. In this respect, we think that we really have the right focus within our joint collaboration. But let me give two additional statements, which I think are really important. First of all, for sure, platform ecosystems or platforms are a lucrative business model, but we should keep in mind that not each business model has to be a platform ecosystem. So there are other very lucrative business models which are not digital platforms. So somehow we really have to balance our discussion so that we really not only look from a platform operator perspective, but also from a platform user perspective so that we have the benefits and explain him why it's important for him to join such an ecosystem. And the second aspect is such platform ecosystems are not suddenly there. They develop over the time. So we really have to look what are possible paths from now to the future to really develop a successful ecosystem. Therefore, we think that we now really have to step back and to look to this topic from a more broader perspective. For instance, we have to look and have to distinguish between a platform operator and a platform user. We have to distinguish a static view or the evolution over the time. And for instance, the topic of network effects, Fujino-san already mentioned this. We think that we really need a closer look to this because especially in B2B, there are other principles than in B2C. So we think we are on the right way. And we will further, Germany and Japan, sharpen the common understanding of the scope and the importance of these different perspectives to really come to this overall overarching topic of business models in manufacturing industry and to really have a common understanding to pave the way forwards. And now I want to hand over to Fujino-san.
Thank you, Dr. Löwen. So he has really given us the full explanation. Going forward, this Japan-Germany expert group will explain what the platform ecosystem is, how we can present the clear definition. We want to also discuss the benefit of participation, motivation, how to build the actual network and ecosystem. So that's the discussion we plan to have. Also, major topics will be interoperability, standardization between companies, open innovation, and servitization, making manufacturing into service industry. So these are three major perspectives. Lastly, I'd like to introduce the books, reference books, two books, really, the depth of competition. First of all, this is written by James Moore and What's Your Digital Business Model by Peter Leo. It is a team of professors who wrote the book. Reading these books will help you understand this ecosystem. We would like to also explore new ideas as we discuss on this ecosystem. Thank you very much for listening. Thank you, Mr. Fujino and Dr. Löwen. Thank you so much. Now we go to Industrial Security Group. IIoT, Value Chain Security, Trustworthiness Profile is the title of this presentation. We have Ms. Aliza Maftun from Platform Industry 4.0 AG3 and Mr. Fujita from Hitachi Limited. Starting with Mr. Maftun, please. Ms. Maftun, please. Can you unmute yourself, please?
So sorry. Hello, I'm Aliza Maftun, and I am a member of Platform Industry 4.0, and I have worked for Siemens in Germany. And my core expertise are in the direction of supply chain security. So I hope you can see my screen. Okay. So in this talk, I'm going to talk about our journey that from the trustworthiness profile to a framework of chain of trust. So in the last RRI symposium, I introduced this topic of trustworthiness profile. And now I'm going to talk about our activities in the last year in which our focus is moving forward from the trustworthiness profile to a framework for chain of trust. So as we know, Platform Industry 4.0 and Robot Revolution Initiative has a very strong and a successful history of collaborating together since 2017. And last year, we came up with a white paper that is called IIoT Value Chain Security, the Role of Trustworthiness. And in this white paper, we talked about, or we introduced a new protocol for exchanging the trustworthiness expectations and trustworthiness capabilities along the supply chain. So this focused more on the bilateral trust between a supplier and a buyer. And now we are going to talk about that how did we transform from this protocol towards a framework for chain of trust. So starting from what the supply chain looks like, the supply chain is far more complex than what we see here. But here I try to picturize a generic supply chain which has suppliers. Suppliers could be in terms of software supplier, hardware supplier, or service suppliers. Then they transfer or they make their products available to the manufacturers or integrators through some retailers or distributors or logistic companies. Then the manufacturers or integrators use these suppliers to build up their own products and then lastly make it available for the end customer. Then other important actors in the supply chain are certification and regulatory entities. Make sure that products and processes are aligned with the local, national, or international regulations, or are aligned with the, or are in compliance to these standards. And then we have some digital part of the supply chain. And if we look at how secure is the supply chain, then we find that there are attacks all over supply chain. So it's a huge attack surface in a supply chain. And then how to ensure our question for trustworthiness along the supply chain. So starting with the definition, that how do we understand the word trustworthiness? So we introduced this definition of the word trustworthiness in the last white paper, that we understand that trustworthiness corresponds to the ability of a stakeholder to meet the expectations of the potential contract partner in a verifiable way. And depending on the use case or on the specific product or the business context, different characteristics of the word trustworthiness apply. And these characteristics are authenticity, integrity, resilience, availability, confidentiality, privacy, accountability, and so on. So this is not an exhaustive list, but these are the generic or typical characteristics that are applied to the word trustworthiness. Then moving forward, we researched about different approaches and different standards that fit in the direction of supply chain security. So for example, ISO IC 28000 or 62443 or standards in ISO 262. We found out that there is not a standard suite or framework that covers the entire supply chain. So what we felt missing is that we need something that would establish and measure trustworthiness of security properties along the supply chain, and that helps creating interoperability to exchange this trustworthiness information between the immediate nodes along the multiple nodes of the supply chain and create some sort of assurance. And lastly, that would support automated processing. And here we thought that our trustworthiness profile that we introduced last year would serve as a basic building block that we can use to create a chain of trust along the supply chain in the future. So starting with it, we thought of a structured approach in which to introduce trustworthiness in a supply chain. So we introduced this idea of dividing the supply chain into several trust domains. Each trust domain would know would identify characteristics to support those trustworthiness characteristics. And now when two trust domains want to interact together, they need to identify that what their trust interaction points are, negotiate these trustworthiness characteristics for the interaction. What are the trustworthiness characteristics and what are of each trust domain and the trust interaction point, and what are the measures that should be adopted to support this. And here at the trust interaction points, the two trust domains can negotiate their trustworthiness terms and trust manner. For the negotiation at the trust interaction point, we need some ingredients, and these ingredients firstly could be in form of identities. So identities of the organization, such as their NTA numbers, or identity of the employees, or identity of the processes, or lastly, the identities of the product that are realized in form of barcodes, QR codes. In the categories, the first type of category is identity authenticating certificate. For example, our public key certificate. Our second category is security certification certificates, so that prove some sort of a security property of a product or a process. So it could be certification according to standards like ISO 27000 or 62443 or common criteria. So these are security certification certificate. And then lastly, we saw that what are the standards of frameworks. So here's a list of standards or international based on the country or regulation or the business regulation or business need. Then in the last year, we discussed about the trustworthiness profile that we say that it is a standardized container that is to be filled by the buyer and the supplier. So if you look at the left side of the profile, it is in gray color. That side, the left part is to be filled by the buyer, in which the buyer first fills in his identity information and then he lists down his expectations, the trustworthiness expectations. These expectations could be in form of standards, or these expectations could also be in form of customized questionnaires. And my colleague would talk about the questionnaire in the next talk after me. And they can attach that what is the expectation and what kind of conformance does it need from its supplier regarding this expectation, and digitally sign this part of the profile and send it to the supplier. On the other hand, supplier fills in this yellow part on the right, first with his identity information, and then corresponding to each expectation, it would say that, okay, if I conform to this, if it's self-assessment or party assessment, and digitally sign it and send it back to the buyer. Then the buyer can evaluate based on his own company policy that to which extent does it want to trust the supplier, or in which regard does it want to trust the supplier. And now to support chain of trust, we plan to extend, or we propose to extend this trustworthiness profile in a way that the buyer has this option that it can ask the supplier for the conformance to this particular expectation, that suppliers are also conformant. So it's not between the immediate nodes of the supply, this option of asking supplier supplies also conform into this particular expectation. And on the other hand, the supplier has these fields in which it says that, okay, my suppliers are also conforming. Here's the proof of that conformance. So here we see that there could be some business requirements where privacy needs to be maintained of the suppliers. So we are looking into technology to which we can ensure that the privacy is not compromised. The components that are put in the product supplied by the supplier are there. So the next steps for us are that we are working on standardizing frameworks for trustworthiness, including the trustworthiness profile that we had introduced in the last years. Then we are looking into the ways or suitable methods for secure identifiers or identities that could support the chain of trust. Then we are looking at the ways through which we can bind these security certificates to the real world entities and its operational environment. Then we are identifying and integrating technologies through which we can increase chain of trust along the supply chain and find that the privacy and other security property suppliers are not compromised. And lastly, we would communicate and discuss with people and everybody. Thank you from my side.
Maftun 様、どうもありがとうございました。
Thank you very much. Next, I'd like to call upon Mr. Fujita. Please. I hope you can hear me. Yes? Let me start. Thank you very much for this opportunity. Thank you very much indeed. I am Junya Fujita. I'm engaged in the R&D of industrial cyber security technology at Hitachi Limited. I also belong to Industrial Security Action Group of RRI. Following Ms. Aliza's presentation, I'd like to talk about the application of the trustworthiness profile. Already, the overall concept was explained to you, so from our side, the RRI's Industry Supply Chain Security Questionnaire for Trustworthiness Evaluation is what I would like to present. Next slide, please. This is today's agenda. So first about the introduction. Now, this is the background. RRI and Platform Industry 4.0 or PI 4.0 have been working together and discussing the trustworthiness architecture in global supply chain. As you know, the global supply chain is accelerated with the ICT. In the next generation manufacturing, in the global supply chain, product manufacturers need to develop products that satisfy rapidly changing customer needs and collaborate with other suppliers to develop their products securely and find appropriate suppliers timely through the internet. In order to make sure there is a security in the global supply chain, all supply chain stakeholders need to have a trustworthiness architecture regardless of the location. So as Aliza mentioned, between Japan and Germany, we have been discussing the trustworthiness architecture. Next slide. Next, let me talk about the factors to realize global supply chain. In order to realize global supply chain, online procurement and digital agreement are important. First, on the left-hand side, we have our online procurement. In order to realize this, authenticity of the parties and the security capability of the suppliers in manufacturing, we need to have trustworthiness profile or TWP. And by exchanging TWP, we can find out the reliability of the parties. On the right-hand side, we have a digital agreement. In order to realize this, we need to have a system to ensure the authenticity of the organization and signer. for the ID management digital signing. In today's presentation, I will talk about the TWP in online procurement. Now, let me briefly explain what we have been discussing in trustworthiness architecture in online procurement. In the online procurement process of two parties before signing the contract, the TWP is exchanged, which is machine readable. So this is the image of TWP. Between buyer and supplier, there is a platform to securely exchange TWP. This is global trusted security infrastructure. More specifically, buyers will make the questionnaire to provide a questionnaire to the potential suppliers. This questionnaire would have a criteria to evaluate trustworthiness. Supplier would answer to this questionnaire, and based on that, the TWL is evaluated. Based on the supplier's TWL, buyer will determine which supplier to use. Let me now go into the details of TWP. PI 4.0 and RRI discussed the content of the TWP and technical architecture to exchange TWP. First is the content of TWP. Among the possible items of TWP, first we looked at the cyber security. Factors included in TWP are based on ISO, IEC, international standards, as well as the major security standards, which are country-specific. In addition, we will refer to the security management measures, which are actually utilized in manufacturing. Based on these, we can create the common, global, and also the profile, which is optimized, including the situation specific to manufacturing sector. Based on all these, at RRI, we developed a questionnaire to visualize the TWP items or factors for the security management of organization and operation. I will talk about the details later. Now let me talk about the method to exchange TWP. As Aliza mentioned, this is based on the TECEP, we developed the TWP exchange protocol. The two parties will negotiate the TWP, and this is the technical solution for that. TECEP helps automate the qualification, evaluation, and selection process of suppliers and products. Next, let me talk about the questionnaire of RRI. As you can see on the right-hand side, there are 25 questions in the table format. Using them, buyers can evaluate the security of suppliers, or TWL. And this questionnaire was developed based on METI's CPSF and IEC 62443, and also the practices used by the companies such as Mitsubishi, Toshiba, Sony, JTEC, and Hitachi, who belong to RRI. By using this questionnaire, buyers can visualize maturity of the suppliers before signing the contract. This questionnaire can be utilized free of charge and can be downloaded from this link. Next, let me go into the details of the questionnaire and application to TWP. First, let me explain how this questionnaire was developed. In considering the baseline of the questionnaire, we looked at 104 requirements of CPSF. Next, based on the security standard of manufacturing, we looked at the structure model and life cycle model between the manufacturers and the suppliers and thought about additional requirements. And we tried to extract all the security requirements in manufacturing. Lastly, based on the list, we tried to narrow them down based on the industry practice and came up with 25 questions. Next is the example of items in questionnaire. This is about the security questionnaire, security governance questionnaire. First, there is a security requirement, and then there is evidence, and there is also maturity level, which has 3 levels. So responder refers to the evidence and answers each question. And by doing so, you can make a judgment about the maturity level. RRI questionnaire has 25 questions like this. Next, let me give you more details about the maturity level of questionnaire. In order to evaluate the maturity level of the suppliers, we refer to the implementation tier of NIST cybersecurity framework. In RRI questionnaire, there are 2 processes. One is management layer process, and the second is operation layer process. And from those 2 axes, we evaluate based on 3 different levels, as you can see here. So level 1 means it's partial, and level 2 is risk informed, and level 3 is repeatable. Of course, higher the level, you have better content of the process and evidence. So it means that the risk management process is continuously improved. Next is the use case of questionnaire. So buyers can utilize this to evaluate TWL of suppliers, especially in the online contract. This helps to make a judgment as to which supplier can be trusted. So for example, buyer first looks at the requirement items of the security and define the level that is expected from the supplier, and the supplier would respond to the questions, and the result of the response will become TWP of suppliers. The buyers, based on the response to the questionnaire, will decide and choose supplier. So in this example, out of the 3 suppliers, supplier C has the highest TWL. So buyer chooses supplier C. Lastly, let me talk about the collaboration between RRI and PI 4.0. PI 4.0, together with Fraunhofer Institute, they have developed a demonstrator in R&D project, and they are demonstrating the trustworthiness architecture concept. The questionnaire developed by RRI is one of the methods to evaluate TWP items and is incorporated into this demonstration system. Finally, the conclusion and next step. RRI and PI 4.0 have been collaborating to establish a trustworthiness architecture for the next generation industries. Through the collaboration, RRI developed questionnaire to evaluate the supplier's TWP. We expect this questionnaire to become a standard in online procurement process. Lastly, we will continue together with RRI and PI 4.0 to discuss the trustworthiness architecture and continue to make the result public. With that, I would like to end my presentation. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Mr. Fujita. Just one small announcement. During the Ms. Maftun's presentation, there has been some technical trouble of audio. So with regard to her presentation will be broadcast or streamed on the web on a later date. Next, we'd like to move on to the standardization group's presentation. on edge management. Review of the standardization requirements in edge management is the title of presentations. From Labs Network Industry 4.0, Future Gesellschaft. From Germany, we have Dr. Gatterberg, and also from Japan, we have CSO Yokogawa Electric, Mr. Oda, speaking. They will introduce themselves first before they start making presentations, starting with Dr. Gatterberg, please.
Thank you very much. My name is Andreas Gatterburg. As mentioned, I work for Hilscher, and today I'm here as the representative of Labs Network Industry 4.0. I'm very thankful for the opportunity to discuss the topics of edge management with the distinguished experts in Japan. And I think Mr. Oda also can introduce himself shortly.
Yes, I'd like to introduce myself. Thank you for earlier introduction. I'm Oda from Yokogawa Electric Corporation. I'm Chief Standard Officer. I'm in charge of standardization policy of the company. It's a great honor to be able to speak today. At RRI, I am a member of standardization expert group. So, Dr. Gatterberg, would you like to start your presentation?
Thank you very much. So today we want to present the joint work that has been done on edge management. And if we can look at the agenda on the next slide, you will see that I would first start with introducing you to a bit of background and motivation for what we did, and talk about what is edge management, why it is important, the scope of the work that we discuss, and how we consider value chains. And after that, Mr. Oda will be so kind as to introduce additional topics for typical business cases and introduce us to sample user stories that have been developed by the colleagues and experts in Japan. And as a summary, we will give a short view on the future collaboration that we want to give and review what we achieved so far. So starting with the background, first of all, I want to give you a bit of context for the Labs network. As you are aware, the Plattform Industry 4.0 is marshalling the efforts for digitalizing the German industry. And this platform, as you see in the middle of this overview, is supported by two groups, the Standardization Council Industry 4.0 and the Labs Network Industry 4.0, where the Labs Network is focusing on practical cases that come from the industry, whereas the Standardization Council ensures the smooth integration of all work results into the different international standardization groups. And they also supported us in bringing us together with the colleagues in Japan, whose feedback is so valuable to us for this work. So now we discuss the contents of the testbed edge management in the Labs Network Industry 4.0. And if we can look at the next slide, we will see that there is an overview of what we consider as our entities of relevance for the work that we have done. So edge is something that we consider to be a border between typical manufacturing systems who have a very different behavior, especially different communication demands than standard IT, and on the other hand, the standard IT systems. And we distinguish three layers for this. So we have the field layer, where the standard automation for manufacturing happens in our context. Then we have the edge layer, where a function is to combine and bring together these two worlds. And on the other end of this edge layer is the cloud layer, where we have standard IT technologies. And as you see for the field layer, everything that is happening there, and these are very, very different things. Those are sensors, actuators, you see a motor. These things are all field devices for us. So whatever is just happening on the automation side, for the view from edge management that we take, we say this is a field device. And then everything that is connected to this world and also to the IT world at the same time, for us is an edge device. This could also be a PLC, a controller. If a controller is connected to both the automation and the IT, we consider it an edge device. And then everything that is not connected to the automation world, but only to IT, then is part of the cloud layer. And that is where we typically see edge management services. And the task of these edge management services is to manage and configure all the entities that are coming together to make an edge solution. So the edge solution typically will have to run based on software applications. And these software applications also have to be deployed, have to be managed, and have to be brought to the different devices. And that is the edge management topic that we consider. And if we look at the next slide, I can shortly try to introduce why this is important based on a customer example. So we have a customer who is building packaging machines. They make packaging machines for a lot of different industries. And when one of these packaging machines is sold to a customer, it is typically shipped to somewhere in the world, while at the same time the machine builder wants to be able to monitor the machine. He wants to be able to put updates to the machine. And now he also, with the digitalization of industry, he wants to be able to make improvements to the machine and put new applications there. So the first topic of edge management for us was how to reach all the different machines. The edge devices that are put in the machines help us to connect to the machines across the different sites around the globe, because they are not interfering with the automation network, while at the same time allowing us to connect to a World Wide Web and distribute software updates to every facility internationally. But the customer also had a different problem. He did not have all his edge devices from the same vendor. Some edge devices were from other vendors. So the mechanisms we developed to bring software updates to the machines did not work on other vendor machines. So he said, okay, but I have a new application. I have to bring it to all my machines because we want this functionality for our customers. And that is where edge management became a topic for collaboration for us, where we said we have to work with different players in the field of edge management in order to ensure that the new application can be brought to all the devices that our customer has. And that is how we came to work in the test bed that I am introducing here. So if we have a look at the next slide, we then see that this area of concern that I explained 2 slides before has been further refined by us to bring different entities into the view which have to be managed and who interact. And in order to be able to standardize this kind of interaction and to make technical protocols possible that can make interoperability between different vendors a reality, this overview has been our guideline to see where interactions between different entities in this overall architecture happen. And you see here that you have the field devices, you have the edge devices, and also edge runtimes that help us run the software applications on them. We have an IT infrastructure where the edge devices are connected to. And if we go further up, we see that we have different tools that allow us to configure devices and to configure the application makeup that we have down in the edge environment. And also we have to consider that we need some kind of storage where applications can actually be brought into by the developers. And these developers is actually the next topic that I want to highlight here. The blue arrows that you see in my overview here are the interaction that happen between the different entities. So this is where we say we need technical interfaces so that if you get an edge device from a different vendor than a software application, they can interact. And the blue arrows are these interactions. The purple arrows come from the entities that bring these kinds of solutions into the system. So if we want to allow application developers to make new applications, we will have example for that later in Ura-san's presentation. The application developer has to interact with the system to publish into it. And these interactions of, for example, also on the left side, the edge device provider who gives an edge device into the system, then have implications for a kind of business structure that we consider for this. And if we then want to further structure how the interactions happen on the level of these different providers, of these vendors, then we can have a look at the next slide. And there we will see that we have these entities that are part of the overall value chain around edge management have to interact in order to bring edge solutions into reality. So we consider component suppliers who provide the field devices and who make different adjustments to their devices, of course, and who also want to have services for devices. They deliver components to machine suppliers, and these machine suppliers take the different field devices, the components, and make an overall machine that does a task. But this machine typically has to be integrated into an overall plant. And this integration then is done by a system integrator. And this system integrator goes to the manufacturing site where the machine user is actually running a manufacturing operation. And he builds up the overall manufacturing process based on the machine he got delivered. And we see then that an edge device can be put into the system at different levels. It can happen at the machine supplier, it can happen at the system integrator. And we will talk more about why that is relevant to different people in examples we will see. And then the edge management system has to be able to supply all of these. So this is the overall value chain that we want to try to address. And I think I'm a bit early, but I think we also started a bit early. So I think we can go to the next slide, and I can hand over the presentation already. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Gatterberg. Thank you for explaining the background of edge management. I'd like to continue on with the benefit of edge management when we have this standard. Let's move on to the next page. If you look at the lower right-hand side, this is the same diagram Dr. Gatterberg explained. We have component supplier on the left, yellow part, they make components, gearboxes, for example. And then those components will be passed on to machine suppliers. a dark green box. Say machine tool may be made by machine supplier, and machine tool then will be passed on to system integrator. System integrator will help to provide the finished machine to end user, the orange box on the right. So this is how the value chain is established. If you look at edge management provider on top, this is going to connect everyone from machine user to machine supplier, component supplier. Those three companies, edge management provider can actually connect them all. So in that sense, these four entities can be connected thanks to the edge management provider. I would like to explain the details on the following page. Four entities are connected, thereby information can be shared. In other words, they will be able to create new business services. First of all, component supplier, they collect data. Based on the data that is collected, they can provide data-based services. Machine suppliers, they understand how the state of machine in the field, they will be able to provide services to the user. And system integrator understands the state of service, they can provide optimization service. Machine user, end user, in the factory, they will be able to receive all of these services from different entities. So let us examine a specific case on the next page. So this is a case of component supplier. So on the left-hand side, the component supplier supply components to machine suppliers, and they will use the component to create the system. This will be delivered to the end user on the right. The components are inside a piece of machine. And as a service, they do not take data from each component that is embedded. The component information can be derived from a piece of machine. If you can access the machine to get component data, of course that enhances convenience. But that will vary from machine to another. Component suppliers do supply components to multiple companies, and these components are embedded in different products, and they have different interfaces. For each machine, you have to have a separate interface. This is inconvenient. So edge management system comes in here in this picture. Using this edge management system, as Dr. Gatterberg explained, multiple places, multiple machines, you can actually share data. If this is possible, on the left-hand side, component supplier can extract data from machine user on the right to understand the operating conditions such as temperature and state of machine being operated, and use that, analyze that to provide services. So the result of analysis can be provided as service to the end user. Maybe suggest that component can be replaced, the timing of maintenance can be also notified. It's not just machine user who can receive that supply. Machine suppliers can also enjoy the service provided by component suppliers. There are multiple users who use different types of machine, and diverse machine can be derived. So there are A, B, C, different machine suppliers, and say X, Y, Z, different users. Information can be provided to machine supplier, A machine supplier, about multiple users, and they can actually improve the overall design of the machine that they build. So having this system, component suppliers traditionally only provides their functions, but they can provide added services based on sensor data. And the better services can be utilized by machine suppliers and machine users. They enjoy better benefits. Please go to the next page. So machine suppliers, let's look at their business case. So just like component suppliers, machine they provide will be delivered to multiple customers. And I'm pretty sure they already have communication interface to provide remote services. For each user, IT infrastructure may differ. So if we want to provide remote services, machine supplier must have different interfaces to different customers, different factories. The way they provide services is going to be costly. Development to support that will be very costly. But if you have this edge management system, you only have integrated interface. You can be connected with multiple users with one single interface. Because of that, machine suppliers will understand the state of machine operation and the maintenance as well. For example, if trouble occurs at user's factory, they can provide remote services to repair the trouble, possibly suggest the replacement. So in that sense, machine suppliers can benefit to provide same level of services to multiple users. This will result in higher efficiency in service provision. Next, this is system integrators' business case. They have a different position in a chain. Component suppliers and machine suppliers, naturally, they produce goods that are used in the factory, but system integrator will combine different pieces of machine to help end user to build production line, for example. Once the production line starts operating, the business ends there. Of course, engineering work is very hard. It involves high level of know-how. Having said that, if you use the concept of Industry 4.0, machine tool becomes smarter and smarter. And we had the concept of plug and operate. You simply have to combine them together. Machine recognize each other, and they can actually adjust themselves to make it possible for a group of machines to work. So the value that system integrator provides today may be lost. So they have to develop new business. So in that case, edge management providers there to extract machine users' data, multiple users. Same data can be derived from multiple machine users. What machines installed at machine user, system integrator does have that information. It's the static information. Using that interface from machine users, system integrators now can access to dynamic data as to what is taking place right now, in addition to historical data. So they can combine static and dynamic data to establish a model. It could be a digital twin. If that is possible, system integrators, just by looking at a digital twin, they can suggest the machine user to optimize the production line that's already installed at the customer's site. Lastly, machine users benefit. I have already explained the benefits. Machine users now have access to all the services. They receive component supplier services to understand the components that they use can be timely replaced in a timely manner, and the machine suppliers can also provide better remote services, remote maintenance services. And system integrators can suggest the optimization of the production lines that they have. So as a result, they will be able to improve productivity and efficiency of the production lines. As I mentioned earlier, this integrated interface at the edge management enable data exchange and sharing meaning that all of the involved entities will be able to develop new services and new businesses. So each management system will contribute to better efficiency and productivity of the total industry. I'd like to give you one more different example. This is the common user stories from Japan about AI engine. So edge devices. If it has AI engine, say it can recognize image and so forth. So let's assume that is the case. AI algorithm has to have a training, so you have to collect data from the factory floor and feed that to learning engine and train that AI engine to make sure that AI engine is functioning well eventually. But this training part requires a huge computing power and computing resources that's not available at a regular data device. It simply collect data and make decisions locally. But AI engine training requires a lot of power and resources. Having said that, we can make engine make decisions. It doesn't require a huge resources. So already trained engine can be downloaded to the edge device. It's possible to help edge device make decisions. The continuous training is a challenge in this case. For the edge device, it makes decision. The data that is used for the decision will then be uploaded to the cloud, and learning algorithm will be run in the cloud to make the engine smarter and smarter. And this engine can then be downloaded eventually to the edge device. And on the edge device side, when the production is idle, changes can be made. So it doesn't have to impact the production itself negatively to make AI engines smarter. As you can see, edge devices exist at multiple locations, at multiple customer sites. So at multiple places, one single trained engine could be made available to multiple edge devices to improve the efficiency. Next page. This is my last slide, last example. I talked about some of the examples of external entities like supplier accessing edge device. So data will be extracted from inside to external entity, or external entity giving instructions to the edge device. But there are communications that will be started by edge devices. So that's the story, some of the stories we try to imagine. Think of peer-to-peer communication between edges. At the edge device, it understands production line. Has it been congested? It is idle. Is the maintenance going on? It knows that state, and that information can be communicated to other edges for better adjustment. The edges can be the initiator of the communication. And the second bullet point is about the edge device. I mentioned the training engine early on. It can voluntarily update firmware. So in this way, edge will start the communication for updating itself. So some of these business stories and scenarios that I introduced you today, component supplier, machine builder, or system integrator, and users, based on these business cases, we try to specify some of the more specific use cases for standardization. For example, changing edge management devices, adding applications, deleting applications, adding AI. All of these scenarios are listed up to try to understand what needs standardized. Where do we have to provide standardization? as our new user story, we are now looking at the edge-initiated communication. So in this way, we are working with Germany to try to explore some of these use cases. So that concludes my presentation. I'd like to invite back Dr. Gata back to conclude.
Thank you very much. And for concluding remarks, let me just explain where we are coming from. So the Labs network first made a draft of the usage view and business view of edge management. And this was done purely by the experts in Germany. And the version that you now saw of our scope and of the interactions that actually will be part of the final product of the edge management testbed is the result of extensive feedback and discussions we were able to perform with the colleagues in Japan. And that is why I want to extend the deepest gratitude of the testbed in Germany to the experts in Japan who were so kind as to review our documents and help us better sharpen and understand all the use cases that we want to cover in edge management. And as I have put here, we are very thankful for the discussion and the updates on the usage view that we are currently doing will be a significant improvement over the initial vision that we formulated. And this is all thanks to the feedback we have gotten from the colleagues in Japan. And we certainly would not have been able to so swiftly and so holistically improve the document without this insight that we gathered from talking to our Japanese colleagues. So we hope that we can continue this work, and I want to thank especially Mr. Oda very, very much for being our partner in this discussion. So I think we can conclude on this. And
okay, thank you very much, Dr.
Thank you very much for your attention.
So we would like to continue this activity. Thank you very much. Okay, Mr. Gatterberg, Mr. Oda, thank you very much. Now, I'm going to introduce the last speaker for today. Japan and Germany, market opportunities in the robotics and automation industries is the title. From GTI, we have Mr. Hartig. Mr. Hartig, please.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. I would like to thank the RRI for having the opportunity to speak in this prestigious symposium and conference with the distinguished colleagues and industry experts from Germany and Japan. The presentation, please. Thank you. In the short presentation, I will divide this into 3 parts. At first, I will tell you something about our company, Germany Trade and Invest, and then I will introduce our services and our products, which we offer for the robotics industry in foreign countries, also in Japan, and particularly in Japan. And I will, of course, talk about business opportunities in the lengthy part of this presentation. My name is Achim Hartig. I'm responsible for foreign direct investment attraction of Germany Trade and Invest. So if you look at the title, trade would be the export part of our company, and invest would be the inbound part, and I'm responsible for the invest part. Next slide, please. And the next slide, please. We are the equivalent of JETRO. So those who are familiar with this, with the trade and investment organizations worldwide and in Japan, we have the mission of supporting German companies and their export activities and discovering new markets. We have the mission to do marketing for Germany as a business location. And of course, that's why I'm speaking here. We have also the mission to attract and foreign companies to enter the German market, and particularly to find companies who are complementary or additionally valuable in the value chains of Germany, and promote and support bilateral relationships between countries. So I'm particularly pleased to have the opportunity to talk here in Japan about the cooperation in the automatics and robotics industry. Next slide, please. These are the different service lines we offer as a company. One particularly attractive aspect of our services is that we promote structural transformation in Germany. We have a variety of regions which are designated structural transformation regions. That means in those regions, it's particularly attractive to invest because there are higher, for example, there are higher grants available. And many of these regions, they are home of cutting-edge industry clusters and universities. So this is a special aspect that we have, not only the promotion of Germany as a whole, but also we highlight areas in Germany specially supported by Germany and by the European Union to facilitate business in structural transformation regions. Next slide, please. Worldwide, we have representatives in every important region of the world where German companies are planning to do export or are already exporting, and also in regions where the main inflows of foreign direct investment of companies coming to Germany come from. As you can see here, no matter where you are on the world, you will find a colleague of ours to be your partner and to assist you in your business endeavors. Next slide, please. Let's take a short look into information about the German market and what we do as a company to make this market transparent. Next slide, please. We provide information, of course, electronically across almost all industries which are relevant for the German economy. And with 3.5 million small and medium-sized enterprises in Germany, there's hardly an industry which is not kind of relevant to be promoted, to be fostered, where we would look for partners or for innovation to bring these companies forward. Next slide, please. Next slide. Thank you. We have flagships products in our information. As you can see, market and industry reports are well received worldwide. They are available on our website and on demand. Particularly for the robotics industry, we prepared a variety of reports and analysis, so that companies who are looking for partners, or companies who are looking for investment opportunities in Germany, they find immediately the information they need. And if they don't find them in the information which are available online, they contact us so that we can provide further details and bring them in contact also with the relevant partners in Germany. Next slide, please. Something which is particularly attractive for German companies, but also when we visit foreign countries, is our so-called foreign market entry program. We have annual delegations of German companies and other participants, for example, to visit Japan for the robotics industry. And in the last 3 years, as you can read, we have visited Japan in the key areas where we find these industries, to have the opportunity to offer direct matchmaking and direct interaction. As we can see, already when we do video conferencing, it's a direct interaction, but it doesn't have the quality of a personal contact. And we hope that we can do soon these market delegations again, so that we have the interaction and that we have the direct contact between Japanese experts, Japanese industry representatives, and the Germans, so that they may develop ideas and business together. Next slide, please. A number of events support our activities in our cooperation with Japan and Germany. It is good to have delegations on the business level. It's very good also to talk about the relationships between Japan when it comes to economic cooperation and in the industries. But it's every time a highlight to have Japanese representatives and German representatives meet each other in one of our events. A flagship event is a Japan-German Industry Forum, which we meanwhile do for a number of years. As you can see, since 2005, we are organizing this in Japan. Every year, it has a different industry focus. Every year, we invite not only industry representatives from Japan, but also representatives from federal states of Germany, because they, as the representative of the states which make up Germany, they have in-depth knowledge about their states and their capacities in hosting industries, for example, in the automation and robotics industry. Next slide, please. It is a must, as you might agree, to be at the IREX in Tokyo, and as you can see, it's not only that we want to be there in the next year, but we have been there as a regular guest. Here you can see our representative, Mr. Iwamura, in the discussion with the client, and I will present you the representatives for this industry later, so that you have also the direct contact data of our leaders. We are represented in the fairs and conferences in the world where automation and robotics plays a major role. They are all mentioned on the left side. I'm sure they're all familiar to you. This is just, let's say, kind of hygiene information so that you can see we have a wide platform to present Germany and also to foster interaction. Next slide, please. There's a flagship event which I want to particularly mention. It's called Rise of the Robots. I mean, we are witnessing the rise of the robots already for a number of years, but this is just a very, let's say, a very superficial title. As we have learned before when we are talking about edge technologies, it takes much more details and much more planning, much more standardization to develop technological and service layers to make this rise of the robots really take place at one point. So when we are titling this Rise of the Robots, it's really to give a headline to something which has ways more facets and ways more details than we can express in the title. However, what is important here again, in this new industry, in these new developments, we make people understand where the market opportunities are. Like I am doing this here in a very in a video call, but there it's online. It's also an online event, but it's ways more detailed and it's really tailored to the robotics and automation industries. It's Wednesday, the 1st of December, 2021. I encourage you to note this down in your agendas, and it would be a great pleasure to see some of you participating at this event. Next slide, please. Looking at market opportunities in the German robotics industry, and I think this is what the business people, of course, are interested in, next to the information where they can meet us or what kind of experts matchmaking we can do. Here it's about figures, it's about numbers, so that we have an estimation. Okay, what are we talking about as a business potential? Next slide, please. Right. Again, I said, yes, that's it. Thank you very much. Germany is the 5th largest robotic market with 20,500 new robot installations in 2019. I think this is a very strong number here. It means that, as you can see, it's only in 2019. And if you want to compare this, with other countries in Europe, we can see that in Italy, for example, in 2019, we had 11,000. In France, we had 6,700. In Spain, 3,800. In Poland, about 2,600. And in Czechia, about 2,600 as well. That means if you're looking for a place where, let's say, robot installation has become a commodity, and it goes without saying that in Europe, this is certainly Germany. It's not only about the numbers of installation, but what goes together with the installation, and as you can see it here, is knowledge about standardization, it's knowledge about the implementation of technologies. And last but not least, and very important for all companies, it's the available of workforce. Good workforce is scarce wherever you go, but the figures you can see here shows that companies are doing these installations, and they are doing this with a workforce they find in Germany. Still, we need more, but it's possible to do this. Next slide, please. Yeah, of course, we can do some KPI in here. As you can see, 346 robots for every 10,000 employees. I was talking about the employee qualification. Here, again, we are kind of Europe's robotics and automation hub. If we look at that in a worldwide comparison, we see that Germany, at least for Europe, has the #1 figure. In Japan, we have 364 robots per 10,000 employees, so it's a little bit more. We have in South Korea 850, about 850 in Singapore, 920, but of course we have to compare the different sizes of the countries as well. Again, underlining the fact that when Japan and Germany are talking about cooperation in the robotics industry and the exchange of qualifications, the exchange of knowledge, it's the right thing to do, because there is the density of industry applications, and there's also a high density of knowledge. And what is also important, next slide, please. What is also important is that all major robotics application industries are in Germany. So you probably don't have to think about what kind of industry to target or what you would find there. As you can see, it's pretty equally distributed among the main industry areas in Germany. The automotive industry, to no surprise, traditionally is a very large contributor in the application of automation services. And yeah, you can see the annual revenue of the industry sector in billion euros. Again, automotive is sticking out. What I think is interesting that across the years 2018 to 2020, the revenues are stable. We're looking at 2020, of course, the year with the COVID crisis, but we can say it's stable. This might not be a surprise, but it's a good business sign. That means that we can expect that these industries will provide stability also in the future. Next slide, please. Across Germany, we have clusters, robotic clusters in Germany. Next slide, please. Clusters in Germany. And to no surprise, they are located in regions where the relevant industries are, so that research and development and application goes hand in hand. Here are some examples, as you can see on the left side. I'm not going through all of these. There's some examples of the clusters, of robotic clusters in Germany. And those who are a little bit familiar with where companies are, or BMW in Bavaria, Volkswagen as a company in Lower Saxony, Niedersachsen, Silicon Saxony in Saxony. So you can see that in these clusters, there are taking the numbers of corporations are taking place between established companies, research and development labs, and that is our job. We attract foreign companies, also foreign research and development labs, to take part in the development of these clusters and to foster these cooperations between companies. Next slide, please. I will show you that that Japanese companies are interested in Germany. I mean, you know this, but it's always interesting to see, okay, are they widespread across Germany? Where are they mainly located? And for the location of Japanese companies in Germany, it's important that Germany provides an ecosystem where Japanese employees, Japanese companies find their culture, find the relevant, I don't know, restaurants, find ecosystems of social interactions. And across the years, North Rhine-Westphalia has been proven to be the federal state where most of the Japanese projects in Germany are located, followed by Bavaria, Hessen, Baden-Württemberg, for example, just to name the first four largest. Does it mean that these are the only federal states interesting? Absolutely not. We will provide you with information, and we will prove you that all other states have interesting docking points for Japanese companies as well. Next slide, please. Just to show you how Japanese companies are currently engaged and invested in Germany. I'm not going to go through the details. You will see it on the left side and on the right side, that business activity and sectoral activities are pretty diverse. Again, proving my point from the very beginning that Germany really offers for almost every industry an option to be successful in cooperation and partnership. Next slide, please. This is almost to conclude, again, the highlights, which I already mentioned. I think interesting here, looking again at automation, is that Japan is number 3 of worldwide machinery FDI in Germany, and Germany is number 2 location in the world for Japanese machinery FDI. And I think we have a beautiful handshake here, which is not a political handshake, which is nothing cosmetic. It's really proven by business and by research and development that these two countries work together in a very important industry, which is relevant for the future. Next slide, please. We can go to the next slide. We have partners in the robotics industries. This is just a list to show you we are connected with every institution which is relevant and important in Germany, and hopefully with the relevant institutions in Japan. If there are some missing, let me know. We will be happy to contact them immediately. And the next slide, please. This is another highlight. These are the people whom you can contact in all aspects about the robotics and automation industry. I would like to point out that Hiroshi Iwamura is our representative for foreign direct investments in Tokyo. Dr. Jürgen Maurer, he is the representative of Germany Trade Invest, so he is the correspondent who gathers information in Japan in our Tokyo office for German companies to do export. Peggy Görlitz is the go-to person in Berlin, in our headquarters. She's the expert for automation and the robotics industry. I myself, I have the opportunity to present this to you. I'm responsible for the investor consulting in general. And we all would be happy to see, welcome, and talk to you or your colleagues or companies you know at one point in the future. Thank you very much for this opportunity to talk here.
Mr. Hartis, thank you very much. We have completed all the presentations today. But lastly, I'd like to once again invite Mr. Heß of BMWi and Mr. Tokuhiro from METI. First, Mr. Heß, please.
Arigato. Dear esteemed experts, thank you very much for sharing your views today. We've seen progress of many fields we are cooperating in, such as data spaces or security. Just a few impressions or takeaways from my side. We've spoken about how to transform our value chains network into integrated platform ecosystems. This is a crucial question for companies, and good that we have taken it up. We've also spoken about the importance of deep-rooted trust. between industrial stakeholders. Trust is a kind of starting point to open up to change. This trust building can be supported by the trustworthiness profile and templates. And thirdly, edge management and the necessary work for the test beds will also be a key requirement to follow up on. Once again, a very big thank you to all the experts who contributed to this exchange and to RRI who made it possible. To conclude, I would like to use the opportunity and focus for a second on the activities ahead of us. On the 18th to 19th November, we will hold this year's virtual Gaia X Summit, where we will reveal the latest developments. And for sure, we will have Hannover Messe in April 2022. As concerns Industry 4.0, we will present new results and further outcomes then. I am totally convinced the German-Japanese relationship will benefit a lot from our excellent cooperation, be it via a video conference like today or meeting in person, which I very much hope will happen in Hannover. Thank you very much for participating in the forum. Thank you very much and hope to see you all soon. Arigato.
Mr. Heß, thank you very much. Now I'd like to invite Ms. Tokuhiro from METI to give us a closing comment. Once again, all the experts, thank you very much for making wonderful presentations. The theme is digital platform today. As I listen to your presentations, there have been multiple forms of realizing it. Cloud and edge architecture need to be established and designed clearly. And of course, trust is going to be quite important as we do so. As was introduced, robotics and automation. In these areas, I believe there is already existing cooperation, but we have to enhance each one of these activities. My hope is to see the deepened relationship between the two countries. And thank you very much for introducing the future events like Hannover Messe. Japan's border control, border limit will continue on for some time. But good news is that we have rapidly declining cases in Japan. If possible, early next year, there will be more people movement. So if it's possible, I'd love to visit your country. Thank you very much. Ms. Tokuhiro, thank you very much. So lastly, I want to invite Mr. Nakatomi, the RRI Management Secretary. Mr. Heß, Ms. Tokuhiro, and all the other speakers, thank you very much. As you listen to the presentations, RRI is a counterpart to Germany. We have been cooperating in wide areas. Thanks to active discussion taking place amongst participating companies of the both countries and also between public-private sectors and universities. Today, we also had active discussion on important common issues like new digitalization trend, digital business ecosystem, and value chain, as well as edge management. These are all critical issues common to all of us. For the past few years, I have been participating in this forum every year, and the quality of the discussion has become better. It's been evolving positively. Now, we are faced with multiple challenges like COVID-19, climate risk, and resource depletion. No single company or country can tackle with these major issues. In order for us to overcome these challenges and assure our next generation to prosper, not just public-private sector or academia cooperation, country-to-country cooperation is going to be essential. So going forward, RRI wishes to continue to work with Germany and also other players from the public-private sector and academy. As we did last year, we had to hold this forum online today, but hopefully next April at Hannover Messe, we can meet you all in person. Also, meet you at October Symposium next year. That is my wish. Once again, I'd like to have all the speakers' faces displayed on the screen to show the appreciation to the viewers. Can you do that? Are we on the screen now? So thank you very much. I'd like to thank all the viewers and participants to join this forum. And thank you all. Over to you, Ohira-san. With that, we would like to conclude today's session. We are honored to have many participants today in this event. Thank you so much.